If there's one skill that a man can learn, one skill to make him an exceptional lover, she will be begging you for everything that you wanted in the first place. You want me to do what? You don't want me to work on this? You want me to jump on Pornhub? Really?
Thanks.
That's so interesting.
Right.
Men are not toxic. Men are the answer. Welcome to the Remasculation Podcast.
Men are not toxic. Men are the answer. Welcome to the Remasculation Podcast. The show is dedicated to the exploration, celebration, and pursuit of healthy masculinity in the modern world. From emasculation to remasculation, this podcast stands in service to all of humanity by taking a stand for good men everywhere. I am your host, Michael Bates. My mission is the conscious evolution of men and masculinity across this planet in our lifetime, one man at a time. I am joined today by a good friend of mine, Dan Hochman. He is a men's health and relationship coach based out of Boulder, Colorado, my old stomping grounds. Dan utilizes an extensive background in shadow integration work and relational coaching to help men lead lives of power, lead lives of greater power and authenticity. And Dan, it is very, very good to be with you here today. How you doing, man?
Good to be here, Michael. Third time's the charm.
Third time is a charm. Yeah, you guys don't even know. Dan and I are pulling no punches today. We've tried to record that. We have recorded 2 previous episodes, and for lots of different reasons, we just knew we had to wait for a third time. So I'm very excited for you guys today to get what's cooking because we're coming at you. We are going to talk in depth about the distractions of the modern world that keep men small, from porn to weed to alcohol to video games, and the distractions that are utilized to hold men back from being able to sit in the discomfort of their life so that they can gain clarity on how to move forward. But before we dive into that, Dan, shadow integration work is your extensive background. What is that, and what does that look like, and why do you specialize in that specifically?
Yeah. Well, first of all, shadow integration work is bringing the parts of us that are in our unconscious to the conscious, right? And so those parts typically have charge tied up into them. They could be our sexuality, our relationship with our power, anything that we've essentially disowned, right? Or deemed as not worthy as being integrated. And the issue is, a lot of times these parts of ourself are superpowers, or they are tied to our superpowers. And so learning to bring them back into the conscious, learning how to integrate them through a variety of different modalities can be the key. Yeah.
Beautifully said. Beautifully said. Yeah, I think there is a Jung quote to the degree, what is it? I'll have to paraphrase it. Until we make the unconscious conscious, it will run our lives and we will call it fate. And the shadow being, the parts of yourself, the unintegrated parts that you don't see yet.
Yeah.
It's good to be here with you, Dan.
Yeah, it's good to be with you too, man. Yeah, I realized I didn't answer the second part of that question, which is how I work with it. And so, it's a combination of really working with and developing our power, right? So resistance training, holistic health, deep relational coaching, and inner child healing work to really get in there and then start to experience any shame, any trigger, any less than ideal relationship with those parts through the body, and then starting to work with them again. So
lovely. So I think that's going to play in beautifully to what we're going to talk about today, because we are one thing I'm excited to talk with you about, Dan, is we sit squarely in 2 different generations. I'm quite a bit older than you. You are one of those precocious young whippersnappers that make old timers like me feel like, why didn't I learn this shit when I was his age, this son of a biscuit? But we're gonna riff today and sort of speak to the differences that I think a lot of younger men are experiencing today versus what men at 40, as myself is these days, are working with and working through. But you had some great ideas for our conversation today. Why don't we just dive in? As we were talking today, we talked about the challenge for men and the difficulty in sitting with pain, and in addition, how to take responsibility for our life and the challenges that come up. Would you like to just sort of dive in on that particular piece?
Yeah, I'd love to. Well, I mean, we've chatted a little bit about this. I think for people who are just watching this, they don't know about the men's group that we held, in Boulder, which is the Red Circle, and a
Tell
lot
them
of
about
that.
it, bro.
Yeah, a lot of that, work that we were doing with these men was really teaching them how to feel in a way that's neither reactive nor creating collapse. Right? Because I think most times when we have a hard emotional experience of something, we either react to it immediately or we collapse into it. Right. And so a lot of what we were doing that I feel is kind of the remedy for a lot of men is learning how to actually run that energy through your body, energy of pain, of discomfort, of frustration, right? And to be with that and to let it, kind of unravel within yourself, right? Nobody taught me how to do that. I don't think you've ever mentioned that somebody taught you how to do that, and I think it's such an essential tool, male aside, it's like a human tool to be able to feel. And because I know I received so much programming at a young age to do the opposite, which was to become hard, to become tough, right? I was largely cut off for a while from my feeling body, from my emotional body.
Sure.
Right. And then I went the other extreme in some ways, maybe not as far as some guys, but my version of the other extreme, which was like I was just so in my heart all the time and I kind of lost my spine. Right. And I think what we strive for and a lot of the work that you and I have kind of collaborated on is how to create space for that third guy, that third version of man.
That's
who
right.
is in touch with his boundaries, is in touch with his personal integrity, but is still able to feel the world around him.
Yeah. Yeah. And just to clarify even further in that, both you and I, Dan, grew up as athletes. I think a lot of men who grew up as athletes or in that particular realm, we were taught to harden ourselves, to be unfeeling in a way. And I want to say this, neither Dan or I are saying that as a criticism. For hundreds of thousands of years, it was necessary for men to be tough so that we could take an arrow, we could take a spear, we could take a sword thrust or a bullet on a battlefield and keep fucking going. Because if we went down, the enemy would overrun us, and our women and children were in the village behind us. And so there's an incredible capacity in men's bodies to desensitize and disconnect so that we can just Jocko Willink and David Goggins it out, and that's a beautiful skill. But then you have also, this world that I grew up in, interestingly enough, as well, as the son of hippies and the son of, a yogi and a mother that does astrology. And I was encouraged to be in my feelings. And you have these sort of sensitive new age guys, right? The ones that only work on feeling and being sensitive and developing their emotional bodies, but have not learned how to hold a sword, to hold that energy. So something I loved about working with you, Dan, in Red Circle, and just in the work that you do and the energy that you hold, I don't feel like there are a lot of men who understand the value of being able to hold both. And I think it's more difficult. It's easier to hold one or the other. You have very specific camps. You can look at high school, like you've got the jocks, you got the nerds, you got the athletes, you've got like the artists. And it takes a very special type of person to, I think, understand the value of being willing to develop both, as you and I both called it in our work together, the heart and the sword quality. And but I'll tell you, man, there's nothing more valuable, both to men and to women, than a man who has understood and learned how to access both his sword and his heart and has integrated them together. And I have to say, Dan, you're definitely a man that I feel has done an exceptional job at doing that.
Oh, thank you, Michael. It's a high compliment. Yeah, I feel it's the kind of thing that, really has to be the only way into working with those energies is to practice with them, right? It can't be conceptualized.
That's right.
It can't be the kind of thing that we sit around and just talk about and don't have a felt experience from. And I think with that, right, it humbles us. It keeps us honest. Being able to actually call upon that energy in yourself at the start when you're just starting to work with your sword, so to speak, right? You might be like, whoa, I have zero capacity in my ability to defend myself or to defend somebody else. And I think for a lot of guys, it can be a real hit to the ego, but it takes a very, I think, beautiful intention in the world to continue to show up and to continue to meet your edge and work with it.
Yeah.
And to understand that, you're doing yourself and everybody in your life a deep service by doing so.
Yeah, for sure. It's been really interesting to me, and maybe you can speak to this as well, like this sort of cultural phenomenon that's happening right now where both Mark Zuckerberg and Elon Musk are training to fight, which is wild. And interestingly enough, I mean, I see the difference that it feels to me like it's making in their energy, for better or for worse, for all the hype aside, like, again, like seeing people that spend a lot of time in their head suddenly forced into their body. I just don't see that as a bad thing, and vice versa. I know we had a few guys that came to some of our events, and again, Red Circle was, in quotes, referred to as conscious combat, and what we would do with men and sort of with battling swords, safe weapons, but push games, boxing games, ways to sort of encourage the warrior out, but to do it in a way where you're connected to the impact that you're making. So a lot of amazing capacity there for men to learn how to really handle themselves in both worlds.
Totally. Yeah, I'm curious, Michael, like in reflection of that group, what do you think was the most valuable thing that, a guy walking in off the street, attending just a 6-hour workshop, what do you think was the most valuable thing you think you might have received?
Well, I think you and I used to joke about this a lot. I think Boulder is sort of notoriously famous for turning out a lot of a very particular kind of man, a lot of sensitive new age guys in Boulder, a lot of that type of energy. And I think what a lot of guys got coming in off the street were a little nervous about holding that energy. And there was a story that I think a lot of them have, which is a story I had when I was young, which is that as a man, you are dangerous. Going into your energy and your aggression and your anger is dangerous. All this story about quote unquote toxic masculinity, right? And the patriarchy. Men are bad, men are dangerous. And so your generation, I think even more than mine, has been impacted by this sort of collective, I don't know what it is, collective surrender to the notion that, oh, I am a man and I am therefore something about me is bad or wrong or dangerous. And so it was really great to get some of these guys in and show them ways to access their anger, not just in ways that were healthy and informative for them, but the benefit of doing it in a group setting and in front of other men, which is something you were just talking about when we were riffing before we hit record here. The importance of joining a men's group, as I see it, really the necessity of joining a men's group these days. Like if you have not realized the technological advantages, and I use that terminology very specifically and very intentionally, the technological advantages of being in a men's group, you are behind. You are behind in the same way that we see, a lot of these people coming out of Silicon Valley, these sort of accelerators in the fields of creativity and production that are engaging in psychedelic use, that are realizing the potential for these kind of things. I really view men's work, and I know you do too, as an essential technology for upping your game across the board. And to the degree you learn to reveal yourself and hold space for other men, you stop turning your partner into your mother and your therapist, which I think a lot of men have learned to do because of, I don't know, lots of reasons, but the uptick of single mothers raising a lot of men, and the absence of a lot of healthy masculine father energy, healthy encouragement, healthy toughness with love. But there is just a real opportunity, I think, now for men to learn both sides of the equation and the absolute necessity of joining a brotherhood, joining a clan. Like, if you're not doing that, what are you doing? Like, your work will accelerate, your growth will accelerate, your relationships will accelerate. You need, and we had this for all of time, no matter where your skin color comes from, no matter where your heritage comes from, we all came from intact communal societies where you would have a band of brothers around you that would enable you to be able to live at your highest and call you out on your bullshit. Because as in tune as you are, Dan, and as in tune as I am, I mean, there's been so many opportunities and moments where you called me out on something that I was out of integrity around that I just wouldn't have known and seen, because, as you said at the beginning of this talk, it was my shadow. It was something that I wasn't yet aware of. So how does that land for you? I mean, what do you see in that realm?
Yeah, likewise, Michael. I think it's one of the biggest gifts that we've lost, or maybe has been bastardized in some way, which is the gift of like healthy masculine feedback. There's like a mentor of mine that talks about, like a healthy masculine shaping being that of like a sculptor, right? He's like cutting and cutting and cutting, but not to cut, right? Not to just blindly cut, but to actually reveal something beautiful, right? To actually create something that, when you cut the fat out, is more beautiful than it otherwise would have been.
Yeah.
And so I think we've lost the ability, I'll rephrase that. I think we're regaining the ability. My hope is we're regaining the ability to give and receive feedback, and to deliver that from a place of love. And I think one of the things that you touched on, right, is around blind spots is, I think that's one of the things I felt proud of in our group was, the intention and encouragement for men to reflect what they feel and what they see in the presence of one another. And for somebody who's never had that reflection before, I mean, it's like a massive light bulb.
Yeah, it really is. And again, a lot of us have been taught culturally that it's dangerous to reveal yourself to other men, because I think for a long time maybe it was.
Right.
People would take advantage. People would, and people still do in this day and age, which is why it's so important to make sure that you have a group of men that are dedicated to the art of confidentiality, the art of understanding the technology that happens in a men's group. It's not just a bunch of guys getting together and blabbering on about stuff. It's a very specific container that gets held with rules and regulations and ways of showing up and requirements. And if you don't meet those requirements, you're out of the group. There's a degree of tenacity and ferociousness that has to be in those groups to hold the boundaries and remember how to hold boundaries and hold each other accountable, but have those parameters be very clear and very well stated so that everyone knows the rules of the game going in. And then you can operate within those rules, and then you feel safe, and then you share. And as anyone who's ever been in a men's group knows, as you and I know, one guy comes in and shares something deep, revealing, painful, sensitive, that's alive, and the whole energy in the space just kind of, and everyone leans in and gets quiet, and the hairs stand up on the back of your neck, and the technology starts to work. And it really is a technology. It's a technology in our bones. It's just there. But again, it's this latent technology that if you don't know it's there and you haven't had a chance to use it or experience it, guys just don't get it. And it's not their fault, right? Because we haven't been given it. We lost this somewhere down the line for hundreds of different reasons. But there's such an opportunity now, Dan, to bring this back. And you're someone that's in this work and bringing this back into the world. And I aspire to be that as well. And so many good men that we know are doing this work, but it is critical because there is such what to me feels like a war, call it a spiritual war, like Tyler Durden said in Fight Club, the spiritual war of our generation, where it feels like there are so many distractions out there that are being leveled against men being as strong and capable and powerful and potent as we can be. And some of those things that I really see are, the rise of porn and the availability. Just why you just go on the internet and you just type it in, and it's there. And it's there in every permutation, in every facet, in every category you could possibly imagine. And it's really tough. It's really tough. Before we get into all that, how does that land for you? What are you seeing in that regard, Dan?
Yeah, I think it's spot on. I think now more than ever, men are starved for healthy eldership and healthy male role models. I feel very fortunate that, since coming into this work about a decade ago, I have been blessed with mentors along the way. One of them being our mutual friend and past coach, Dave Burns.
Mm-hmm.
And I think having men that can see you, that can see perhaps the gifts in you that you don't yet see in yourself, and can help you and challenge you, but also just support you in cultivating those, is invaluable. And so I think a lot of men today are starved for direction. They're starved for eldership. They're seeking pleasure over purpose, right? They don't really have anything that they're able to tie into that's like, this is my reason, and it doesn't have to be this massive thing, right? It can just be, I love being there for my family. I love being there as a community member, or it can be larger. But I think having purpose, and letting that evolve as it does, from your 20s to 30s and 40s and on. But then also, being inundated with cheap dopamine, right? That I've experienced in myself, right? In my own journey, and am still not fully above it, right? When something's really hard to be with, can you dig your heels in and can you actually feel everything that's there without collapsing, or without reacting? And so I think developing that capacity, combined with having other good men, is a really powerful combatant to these various forms of distraction.
Yeah. There's a very old saying that comfort is the enemy of the warrior, or the warrior spirit, and you said it, man, the prioritization of pleasure over purpose, that seems to be profligating across the internet and sort of around in the spaces, again, as healthy masculinity continues to be demonized and substitutes are legalized and made more readily available. Again, maybe there's a negative intention behind it. Maybe there's something there. Maybe it's just random and what happens as a result of the proliferation of capitalism. But there are so many available opportunities now, especially for young men, to not have a purpose, to not be focused, to not have a direction. And in a way, it almost feels like it's being celebrated. So smoke some weed, man. Weed's legal. Smoke weed. I'm not here to talk shit about weed, but I kind of am here to talk shit about weed. Because, the guys I know that smoke the most are always the first ones to tell me that it's not addictive. And maybe it's not biochemically in the ways that other substances are, but it is very emotionally addictive, as I've seen it with good friends of mine. And it is a very alluring feminine spirit that can pull you away and distract you in the way that porn can also distract, these sort of alluring shadow elements of feminine energy, which is not in any way to demonize women or blame women for any of this, not at all. But I'll say this, and then I'll pitch it back to you. I've fought my battle with porn, and it wasn't much of a battle. It's never been a big draw for me, but it is the only, I'll say it this way. The moments that it is a draw, the only moments that I really feel like, oh, I should watch porn, is when I know I need to sit down and write an article that's a little bit edgy, or I need to do something that is like, talk about the unintended consequences of feminism, or talk about, these challenging pieces. And then suddenly it'll be like, oh, hi, interesting. That's so funny that you would show up right now. It's like, wow, huh. You want me to do what? You don't want me to work on this? You want me to jump on Pornhub? Really?
Right.
That's so interesting.
Right.
And in a way, it's like, the greatest trick of the devil is to make you think or make you believe he doesn't exist. And so when he shows up in that form, that energy, it's like radar for me now. It's like the thing that tells me, fuck, okay, this is the thing I need to be doing. I need to be able to sit in the discomfort of taking the action I know I need to take. And I've learned how to do that through men's work. I've learned how to do that through challenge practices and daily practices of discomfort, by choosing to create discomfort for myself as a means of practicing, rather than waiting for life to throw discomfort at me, which it inevitably will, and be able to train for that. Like I would train my biceps in the gym. It's like, well, discomfort is coming. What is it? The first of the Four Noble Truths, life is suffering, from Buddhism. It's like, okay, well then train for it. How do we train for it? What were you gonna say, Dan?
What do you feel? I'm curious, Michael, like, we've been talking about discomfort quite a bit.
Yeah.
What do you feel is the primary discomfort? And maybe this depends on generation, but in your work with your clients, what is the primary thing that if they were to turn towards it instead of turning away from it, they would see the greatest, improvement in their life well-being?
It's purpose, man. It's life purpose. Without question, it's purpose. And by that, I mean, like, why are you here? Like, why are you alive? Why did you incarnate on this planet? Because it wasn't just to push paper for someone else's dream, or, work next to the robots at Amazon that are eventually going to replace you in 3 years. That was my crucible from the age of 19 until 36. My pain was not knowing what I was here to do, but not having the tools to discover or learn like you did. I didn't find men's work until I was 35. I didn't have a men's group. I didn't have mentors. I had no mentors, essentially, from the age of 19 until 35. And that, I think, is death for the masculine in a way. Archetypally, you leave your mother's house in your teenage years and you go into your father's house in the realm of the masculine. And then you're supposed to even leave your father's house and go into the mentor's house, the male mentor. And I never really had that outside of that era. And so I think part of why I do the work I do is the thing I didn't get is the thing I'm meant to give. And so being able to understand and recognize the absence of that and what it cost me, and the story that I had for a long time about how it had set me back, and how, these young guys like Dan, they've been in men's groups since they're in their early 20s. I'm behind the game. But it's not about that. It's about just recognizing that this technology is very, very real. And there are tools and techniques, whether it's a men's group, whether it's coaching, working with coaches. Both Dan and I, we're both coaches in that space. And again, came to that space by being coached, by going through a process and learning how to discern what my purpose actually is, and sit in the discomfort of determining that, and not taking no for an answer, not taking I don't know for an answer. Because if I've learned anything from the coaching work I do, it's that everybody knows the answer. They're just not willing to sit in the I don't know for long enough and have someone push back on it. So How would you answer that same question, Dan? What have you seen in your work and for yourself and for your generation even?
Yeah, I think you hit one side of the coin right there, which is purpose, and
Yeah.
look at the other side of that coin that's related to purpose, but it's connection.
Mm.
Connection. I think having places where men feel like they are, an integral part of something, right? So why I think part of the reason why we join teams, um, we're intrinsically drawn to finding our place among others.
Mm.
And I think most of us are starved for that nourishment. We're starved for connection. We're starved for having some kind of role
Mm.
in a community, in a family, in a team of some sort, right? And I notice for myself, like, whether it's having sat in a medicine ceremony and coming out of that, or whether it's having gone on a retreat, I feel so full on the other end of that I'm so much less likely to be drawn to my phone,
Mm.
right? But if I'm, I think back to 2020, right? Most of us being insulated in our rooms and, cut off from connection,
Yeah.
it becomes so much more compelling to escape, right? To distract, I found myself going deep into that rabbit hole, right? And I think that's part of, you know, being a guide in this work is
Yeah.
realizing that a lot of times you only learn how to hold somebody in that experience, or you only learn through that experience by also having fallen prey to it, right? And alchemize that
Oh, yeah.
lesson. And we've talked before about kind of the harms of cancel culture, but I think one of the
Mm.
biggest harms is this. It's a nuanced topic, but this idea that we're not supposed to learn from mistakes, right? And so,
How else do you learn? It's like,
right,
yeah,
right.
yeah, yeah. We talk a lot about that, and a lot of what I'm inspired to write about, and I know we've talked about and taught about together, is the ability to hold two seemingly mutually exclusive things together at the same time that are not actually mutually exclusive. The values of liberalism, the values of conservatism, being
Right.
able to extract out the values of both and speak to the shadows and the challenges. The United States of America, one would argue, as a constitutional republic, is the greatest efflorescence of liberty and democracy that has ever existed on the face of the earth. And this country was carved out of land violently removed from those who were here before, like all land, by the way. And the blotches on the face of the country of the slave trade and the native genocides and these things, also exist and are real. And so, how do we hold both the value and the shadow as a culture and as Americans? How do we bring that forward and speak to both without having to continue to take sides and fall victim to one of the oldest military tactics in the book, which is divide and conquer, divide and conquer, divide and conquer. And while we're busy fighting about who's right politically or racially or whatever in this country, power continues to be consolidated and centralized in the hands of, well, that's a whole other podcast, isn't it, Dan?
But I think it dovetails really well into something we were kind of jamming on briefly before hopping on, which is, on a larger scale, there's this polarity, right? We're forced to, we believe that we're forced to choose a side, right? And, you and I have had more of an intimate relationship with, a world somewhat similar, with its gifts and shadows, which is the world of polarity, relational polarity.
Right.
And yeah, it's been interesting to be a little bit further removed from that world in the past few years, and
Yeah.
to realize, whoa, there were some things in there that I see perpetuated in the coaching industry that are harmful.
Yeah, no kidding. No kidding. What are some of the things that you've seen in that world specifically, or that you've experienced?
Yeah, I think for myself, having been trained and indoctrinated in the data lineage, and
Mm-hmm.
I
That's
want to say
David
this
Beta.
respectfully because I think a lot of people benefit from having an understanding of polarity between humans. I think it exists, and it led me in relationship as well as just in myself to you know embodying characteristics of what you've jokingly pointed to as the data bot, right? The guy with the super straight spine, deep breath, and right, it becomes a parody. And I think largely because it's pointing on some level to inauthenticity. And for myself, um, a shadow that I experienced in pursuit of the ideal masculine or the divine masculine, right,
Mm.
was actually a self abandonment, oftentimes, of my own boundaries, a self abandonment of my own yeses and nos in pursuit of trying to be the ideal container, right, for a feminine partner, which, you know, oftentimes can be reinforcing their own trauma, right? And it's been really interesting to work with a friend and mentor of mine, Chris Bale, and to hear his,
Mm.
thoughts on that world and how most of us are practicing over polarity, right? We're acting polarity, but we're actually largely disconnected from our own masculine pull, right? From our own body, from our ability to feel our connection to our sexual essence.
Mm.
And that was the biggest game changer for me, man, was like, oh, actually, I just need to really connect to my body more deeply and let that inform how I show up in my relationships.
One day I'm going to have a podcast about the story around my excommunication from the David Data
Mm,
community and what I did to
mm,
deserve and earn such a fate. But yeah, you're speaking to something that's really important. I think for a lot of people that are in the work, doing the work, always in the work, it's like you can tell because there's something almost artificial
mm,
in that space, and something that can be artificial in that data bot, that robotic way of being the masculine and the feminine and all these different sort of stereotypes or ways of being. And you and I are very plugged into the coaching sphere and the
mm.
conscious sexuality sphere and the polarity space. And yeah, it's very much its own meta universe. But there is. I love that you mentioned Chris Bale too. I've been fascinated by his work for a while as well.
Mm.
But yeah, I think that there's something about, as you said, the ability to connect to your own masculine pole. And what does that even mean for you? The one thing I will credit Data with sort of helping me recognize was that, as he always sort of put it, that until you're able to break through your conditioning and discover what you're actually attracted to, who you actually are, beyond and beneath the conditioning that you've accrued from your parents, your upbringing, your teachers, everything that you've learned and had thrown at you, you'll continue to struggle in a way in relationship, because the relationship will be required to be sort of the crucible of showing you and helping you dive into who you really are by means of creating conflict in your relationship. And so you'll continue to polarize to very specific and familiar emanations of masculine or feminine energy in male or female bodies, whichever you're attracted to, as a means of healing that conditioning. And of course that often happens in challenge. So yeah, let's tie it in to, I think, what I see specifically younger men getting drawn into these days, the challenges and distractions of the three villains, let's call them: porn, weed, video games. Video games are fascinating to me because video games are a substitute for the hero's journey, right? They're a substitute for the quest that the masculine is meant to go on out in the world and out in their life. But for many different reasons, men and young men have been systematically disempowered from claiming their masculinity, not able to gain access to healthy versions and models of masculinity, told they're toxic, told they're unconscious, told patriarchy is this thing, which is, by the way, the presumption that men as a class oppress women as a class across the board, which is so harmful as an idea to men and women. Because again, it's like we are the same species, people. And the more that we tear down women, by default, we are tearing down, to the degree we tear down men, by default, we are tearing down women as well. Because who do you women have to date? Who do you have to choose from? So there's a lot of imbalance. But yeah, video games, hey man, video games are fun. And it's not that I'm saying, or that we're saying, that you shouldn't have outlets to relax and unwind, and that you should be just crushing it all the time, crushing it. But these particular distractions, these as you said, cheap dopamine hits, I think can be really, really harmful. Yeah. What are your thoughts on that, Dan?
Yeah, I think it's a beautiful, kind of road to explore here, because I think there is this innate urge in men to, I see it in my work, to want to feel powerful, but to be afraid to, right? Afraid to actually take up space or be big, or this idea that them feeling powerful is at the expense inherently of someone else feeling powerful, right? And I think that oftentimes takes the shape of like either collapse or posture, right?
Yeah.
Right? Like the Andrew Tates of the world, or these, these role models that a lot of teenage, boys are looking at, that are these postured, role models of the guy in the Lamborghini smoking the cigar with, Instagram models around him, right? And then there's this like collapsed version that we've kind of been talking about this whole time. And so, yeah, I think in general, there's nothing that's going to quite rub that itch in the deepest way that I think all of us are looking for. But the insidious thing is that, similar to fake food, right? There are things that are free, that are this accessible in a second, that will mimic the satiation of actually having a purpose, actually cutting your teeth in some way.
Yeah.
And so for a lot of men, it's a twofold problem. It's scary to go out there and actually try to carve their own path. Nobody's taught them how to, and they're terrified to be canceled or shut down, or it feels like a very intimidating world. And then they're inundated with all of these cheap forms of dopamine that keep them dull and lazy,
docile, pacified, and keep their T levels low too. That's another thing. It's, marijuana lowers your testosterone.
Yeah.
Sorry, guys. It does.
Totally.
It does. And consistently spilling your seed and pair bonding with an image on a screen, not to freak you out, but it does debilitate your ability to pair bond with an actual human being. And I've talked to a number of women around your age, Dan, and in their 20s who have insisted that they can't date men their own age because men in their 20s, as they've told me, are just gone. They're so addicted to porn, they can't either get it up with the woman, which is heartbreaking to me to hear that a man in his young prime, when your testosterone should be at its peak, is not able to operate with a woman. But that porn has gotten so nefarious and so addictive in its variety that people are choosing that over the challenge of going out with women or pursuing women. And I get it, because again, it's become dangerous to be a man. It's dangerous to, you go up and you hit on a woman and maybe she says, sexist, or maybe she cries wolf on you and suddenly you're being canceled. And so I think it's really understandable that a lot of men are just saying, it's not fucking worth it. They're going red pill. They're going that, sort of MGTOW path. And if you're not familiar with these terms, I highly suggest looking them up, because there's a whole generation of men who are really, sort of weaponizing back against, again, the unintended consequences of feminism as I see it, and these trends by giving up on women altogether, or saying that they're giving up on women altogether. Because listen, guys, sorry. Women are remarkable, beautiful, incredible beings. And again, we're on the same team. So
that's it.
Yeah, go for it.
And I think one of the things, the event that you did, Michael, I'm forgetting the name of it. It was the event in Denver. Those two.
Yeah, the Desire on Fire
women.
Event. Yeah, I'm doing one here in Austin this Saturday, actually. So.
Oh, amazing! I wish I could be there, because it was such a incredible experience to be a part of, and to witness men and women healing together in that space. Because, I think a lot of times these movements, they're real, right? Like the men going their own way. A lot of these men have had horrible, traumatic things happen to them, right? And I'm not saying that at the devaluing of the female end of that equation, but what was so beautiful to witness in that event was mature examples of men, mature examples of women. And I think that's what a lot of these movements get wrong, is that they forget that there are men and women that are committed to showing up in a good way with one another, showing up and using, I think in your words, right, relationship as the diamond vehicle, right? And I think that often gets lost in these conversations, that yes, there are a plethora of examples of immature masculine and feminine out there, and there are also a lot of incredible men and women doing something different.
Yeah, there are. And that's the thing, man. It's like there is so much goodness to be found in relationship. There's so much goodness to be found there, and so much value. And, the diamond vehicle, the Vajrayana ideal of tantric Buddhism, the two-bodied practice, you can sit in a cave, you can meditate, you can go to the gym, you can build your own business alone, lone wolf, siloing it out. Or you can use the technology that is built into other people. You can use the technology of a men's group. You can use the technology of a relationship to work on yourself and to be worked on. And, it's important not to have boundaries in your relationship and not just be doing the work all the time. But guilty. But yeah, just the opportunity that exists there. And, for you guys out there, porn stars are actually terrible at sex, and you need to realize that. Like porn is a lie. The whole thing is a lie. The guys stay hard because they're all on Cialis or Viagra, and they're using it all of the time. The women are so desensitized, and of course there are exceptions. I'm not here to talk shit necessarily about porn stars, but I'm also here to talk shit about porn stars. So let's fucking go, because I don't think it's very healthy, and I don't like to see sex debased and the remarkable technology and partnership of two human beings coming together in love and what can be made in that space not even having to be in love, but consciously. And so, the problem with porn is that it is what is teaching specifically our young men how to have sex. And to me, it's worse. It's worse than it's like anti-skills. Like porn, like learning about sex from porn for men it's an anti-skill. It actually makes you worse at sex. It makes you worse at partnership. It makes you a worse lover and a worse boyfriend and a worse partner to women, because it makes you think that you can just slap a pussy around and it's just going to get excited and just go to town, and that's going to be fulfilling to them. But it's like, I was just having this conversation this weekend. If there's one skill that a man can learn, one skill to make him an exceptional lover, it is to slow down. Slow down. If you can develop the discipline to slow down, and to know that if you just slow down, or you don't rush in and try to get your needs met right out of the gate, if you can put your attention on her, if you can put your attention on her pleasure, on her body, on her experience, and build that, and then take it away and give it back.
That's it.
And take it away. She will be begging you for everything that you wanted in the first place. And men, when you experience a woman that fully opens to you, if you understand the gift that you can give of helping a woman to feel both safe and cherished in that moment, she will open to you in a way that will fuck you up for the rest of your life, because you will never be able to have ordinary, boring sex again. You just won't. It'll change everything. So I dare you, fellas, I dare you to learn some real skills, to, go to a bookstore and pick up some books. David Data's some great stuff, man. There's some good stuff in there. Margot Anand, there's some really great tools out there to learn about sex and learn about women and learn about yourself as men, that does not debase and demoralize and desensitize and literally steal your soul out of your eyeballs. Because that's what it feels like. Like when I was given this assignment to meditate and be in a meditative state and watch porn and pay attention to my system. And what the thing that broke it for me was it felt like my spirit was being pulled out of my eyes into the screen.
Wow.
And that's just me. But again, I'm not here to demonize anyone. I'm not here to demonize sex workers. I'm not here to demonize men or women. But I think it's really time to start talking some shit about this stuff, because it's just all over and it's so accessible, and it's not healthy. It's not healthy.
It's not. And I think what happens when we slow down, Michael, two things happen.
Tell us, Dan.
We can feel more, and we become present. And I think those are the main two essential ingredients. There are more to good sex, right? Is to be present with one another, to be able to notice all of the subtleties that happen in that space, and then to be able to feel. And most of us are not actually feeling when we're having sex, or we're chasing a goal, we're chasing an orgasm, right? And we're losing the felt experience of each other, and then that actually becomes unsafe.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Like, again, guys, like it's time for some healthy, I'm going to say it, some healthy shaming. Like, if you don't know what semen retention is, and you've never gotten curious and practiced semen retention, you're behind the times. If you've never looked and researched any of these books on Tantra, these ideas about, like you said, Dan, you freaking nailed it, man. When we slow down, two things happen. We become more present, and we can feel more. And I get that can be really scary, and that there's a reason why people don't slow down sometimes, because then you have to feel the impact of what you're doing. And maybe if you just want to fuck and you just want to come and you just want to get her naked, if you actually slow down to feel the impact of that might impede that goal. And so, yeah, Dan is on to it, man. Like, the keys to good sex. Can you become more present? Can you feel and attenuate to the present moment and be able to give her the thing she doesn't even know she wants yet? and ride that wave of presence, and be present with yourself and be present with what you're feeling. I think we haven't been taught how to be intimate with each other. And I think we're terrified of each other right now. I think men and women are terrified of each other, again, because, if men oppress women as a class and women are oppressed by men, it's like, how can they not be afraid of themselves or each other in some ways? But there's so much out there. There are other narratives. There are other narratives. Yeah. What are you chewing on with that, Dan? Yeah.
Yeah, I think even in that process of slowing down, another thing that I've experienced, until relatively recently is there can still be a leaving of yourself in pursuit of your partner's pleasure. So it's a nuanced thing, right? But one of the things I've learned from Chris is your energetic, experience, the way you're felt by a woman changes as you're retaining your semen, because there's just more energy there. And so a lot of times clients of mine get caught in, performance, and even in from a good intention of wanting to please their partner, they get stuck in another subtle trap, which is they leave themselves.
Yeah.
Right. But our ability to feel ourselves during sex as the starting point to feel someone else is essential.
Yeah. And being able to preface those engagements, those physical engagements, with conscious conversation, with an exchange of, what are you available for? What are your desires? What are your boundaries? What are your fears? What are your concerns? Are you on birth control? When was the last time you were tested? There's a lot of different frames. ISTA, the International School of Temple Arts, offers a wonderful sort of acronym for
BDSM,
a conscious,
right?
Yeah, our BDSM, yeah, and there's another one they use called SPREAD, SPREAD. But it's just a map. It's the conversation we all should have been taught how to have when we were freaking 12. When we were 13, when we were coming into our sexuality and learning how to speak to each other as young men and women, of how to be in healthy desire, how to be in healthy relationship, how to be in healthy boundaries, and how to recognize when someone starts to disassociate in sex. Or, like for me, I was that overgiver. I was that, let me make sure that I'll derive my sense of fulfillment by being pleasing to her and abandoning my own desires. Or, wow, gosh, if I have desires or I want something that's a bit intense, maybe I am toxic, so maybe I shouldn't do that. If I want to experience something that they do in porn, maybe that means I'm bad and wrong. And so again, the act of clarifying what you want, why you want it, when you want it, how you want it, feeling that, being present to that. There's just men, guys who are listening, there's so much more available that you're just not aware of yet. I wasn't aware of. And the freaking difference between where I am now and where I was at the beginning of my men's work journey, I cannot fathom what my life would be like without it. It literally feels like the difference between heaven and hell. It feels like the difference between heaven and hell when I feel back into where I was at 35 and the beginning of my men's work journey. And the challenging thing about it is it didn't feel like hell at the time. It was hard. But I wasn't aware. I hadn't sensitized myself and attenuated my ability to be in feeling states in the degree that I am now, and notice things and pay attention to things. And I still fuck up all the time, man. All the time. But the difference is I have a good group of men around me now to be like, yo, bro, hey, that thing you're doing? Yeah. You need to look at that. Fuck you, man. Right. No, fuck you. I love you. Let's talk about it. Yeah. It's, you become dangerous in a really good way, because your shadows don't stand a chance against other good men who have developed themselves and their skills to be able to see the truth and speak to it in a way where they can highlight your brilliances and also your shadows. So again, right, that ability to hold both sides of the equation and not just cut a dude down and not just blow smoke up his ass, but really bring both in a context of consent and, eye to eye conversation. So
That's it, man. And to kind of reference another mentor that I've been grateful to have in my life who first introduced me to that concept of heart and sword, Adam Hochman. He talks about the heart always leads the sword. Heart always comes before. And so having that trust and that knowing that the men in your life, the people in your corner are bringing something that they see for you from a place of good, right? From a place, because most of us have the wounds. I know I had, so much shit tied up with the men in my life around feedback, right? Around, criticism. And so the first thing a lot of men probably experience is like, fuck, it feels intense to open myself up to be seen by a man. Right. But when you trust that that man has your best interest in mind, it's a different game.
Yeah. Yeah. It really is. It really is a different game. It's a different game that you're playing. It's a level up in a way that is hard. I think it's just hard to get until you get it. And I think that's the challenge, right? It's like video games are fun and they're engaging and they pull you in and they give you that dopamine right away. And suddenly, your avatar is jacked and handsome and has got a big sword, and, the women in your cohort are sexy and attractive. But the reality is most of the people behind those characters are not. They're sitting at home all day and haven't learned the gift of youthfulness as a man and the time to be able to train your body and get strong and train your mind and get strong. And that your peak as a man is not your teens. It's not your 20s. I don't even think it's your 30s. I think it's your late 30s is where you start to come into the prime of your life. And, there's a lot of ways to develop yourself and to actually create a hero's journey in your own life and to be a hero in your own life and to, you don't have to be 6 feet tall. You don't have to be, fucking handsome. You don't have to have a six pack, but you can go out and discover what's meaningful to you and pursue it doggedly and discover the strength that lies within you and, be on a mission for something that is meaningful to you. And it takes work to discover that sometimes. Some guys know it out of the gate. I'm going to be a fireman. He's 6, and then he's a fireman. He's a fireman all his life. And that guy, it's like, wow. I was always jealous of that guy.
Yeah.
But for the rest of us, it's like, okay, there's ways to do the work. But man, get in a men's group. Get in a men's group.
This is our plug. Shameless plug. Go out there. Do it.
Well, and I mean, don't join mine. Don't join Dan's. Join someone's. And it's for you. Like my mission is the evolution of men and masculine consciousness across this planet in our lifetime. I don't need you to join my cohort. I don't need you to join my coaching program, but I need you to join one because it's time to turn the tide. Like it's getting ridiculous out there, and there are not enough healthy male role models and mentors, as you said, Dan, as you've been blessed to have. We have to become that. We have to become that for each other. And
as Michael said, choose. Oh yeah, choose what resonates with you. That's the beauty is like, I know you've experienced this. I've experienced it so many times of like, a guy kind of approaches you wanting to get involved in some capacity with this work. And I've had the experience of like, I don't actually think I'm the person for this guy. Mm-hmm. The good news is there are a plethora of men that are. There are a plethora of men that are going to jive with you and click with you and give you the medicine that you need.
Yeah.
And are going to be the specific, kind of archetype for your own journey, but
That's
I'm
right.
fully with you. I think every man needs one.
I've said this before, and I will say it again, and I will continue to say it ad nauseum. I truly believe that there is nothing, and I mean nothing, that is more valuable at this time on this planet than a truly conscious man, a man who has developed both sides of his equation, both sides of himself, and is able to stand truly up and in the name of what he believes in, who has done the work to discover what that is. It will instantly make you more sexy. It will instantly make you more money. It will instantly make you more hireable. It will instantly make you a better son, father, brother, teacher, friend, lover. It just does. More presence, more awareness, more consciousness makes you better. It makes you more valuable, and it translates into every aspect of your life, from the bedroom to the fucking boardroom to your bank account. It just does. I've seen it's happened to me. It's happened to you. It's happened to so many of the people that we know who have dove into the shit. And yeah, it means looking at your shit, man. But how fucking cool is it to feel like, wow, I'm being rewarded now for all the shit looking I was doing, for all the wading through my own garbage for all those years. And now I get paid to do the work that I love, to be a coach, to be a mentor, to be in this space authentically as much as I can, standing up for men and standing up for what I believe in this way. And it's good work.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's, I felt this, before we know a little bit about, or we've talked a little bit about some of the things I do musically, but that's been a big impetus towards creating music is one, you get to alchemize your own pain, then you get to serve other people.
Yeah.
Right. It's like the golden thread, in any form of alchemy like that, whether it's a men's group, whether it's a creative endeavor, is feeling and then creating from that space.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. What would you say, Dan? And maybe we can sort of wrap this up with this. I think we've hit a lot of amazing things today, but what is your view of the state of men right now? And what do men need to hear? What do men in your generation need to hear? How do they empower themselves in a genuine and healthy way?
Yeah, anybody that comes to me, the first thing that I will kind of notice is the relationship that they're in with their body. I think that's where it starts, and I think that's a jumping off ground for any man, which is, what are you currently doing right now to either serve your body or actively take away from the health and vitality of your body? What are you eating? Right? How are you breathing? Are you drinking enough water? Are you doing some kind of movement? Right? That's where it starts, because anybody that I've ever worked with, the second that they start to feel powerful in their vessel, everything else changes. The relationship that's been out of integrity, the career that's been out of integrity, right? It can be daunting because it will all start to come into focus. So the first thing that I think any man can do is start to build a better relationship with his body. That's the first thing. And then from there, once you start feeling better, once you start looking better, once you start having a felt experience of your body as powerful, then what do you choose from that place?
Yeah. Something as simple as dropping down and doing as many push-ups as you can. Right. Like stepping into the discomfort of what it takes to change, because you can, Elon Musk could empty his entire bank account and would not have a chiseled physique. He has to go to the gym. and he has to work at it. And there's something so beautiful about that. I think especially for men, there's something even about that. Anyone can go in the gym, and you can build something that no one can take away from you and no one can buy. Like, you can buy a gym membership. You can hire a good personal trainer. Like, if you got money, that's great. There are advantages, but being willing to go in there and get tired and look in the mirror and not like what you see and stick with it and not let the stories in your own skull get in your way, but knowing that the pathway to bettering yourself is, it's not a quick one. It shouldn't be. And that's what these little quick dopamine hits steal from us. And it's the ability to realize, like, this is a long game, but there's time and it starts now. And what are you fighting for? That was the piece for me, man. Like, what am I fighting for? What's my mission? What's my purpose? Why am I here? It's okay if you're working at Amazon, man. I didn't say that earlier to make a dig at anyone that's doing that. Like, do that. You don't have to, your job doesn't have to be your life purpose. You can have a life purpose and a gig that allows you to be able to work your life purpose. But, you gotta figure that out. That's a critical piece for men. You gotta figure out what your purpose is. I mean, it can be your purpose for this week. It doesn't have to be your whole life.
Yeah, man. Yeah. And, kind of to piggyback on that, I think it can feel really overwhelming for somebody starting with such a long road ahead, even just take relationship or purpose aside, just even in their well-being, like where, somebody who's 100 pounds overweight, or like, where do I start?
Yeah.
Right? Go on a walk, right? Walk daily. Right? Doesn't even, if the gym feels daunting, if you're terrified, I've had people I work with, they're like, it's intimidating to be in the gym with all these other people who are in way better shape. I get it. Right? I'll never, be able to fully put my hand, myself in the position of somebody 100 pounds overweight. And I can really, get there and understand that it's daunting.
Yeah.
And so taking something as simple as, walking daily, as, drinking a little bit more water, as getting a little bit more sunlight, it can start small. It can start even as small as, like, what you said, Michael, right? Just doing a few push-ups, right? Starting to move these muscles that have been asleep for a long time.
Yeah, and don't do it alone. Find a trainer, find a group, find a group fitness class. CrossFit was a game changer for me.
Right.
Me and everybody else got hurt because it's, you got to watch it for CrossFit. But get in some type of HIIT training class, some type of high intensity interval training class. Get in there with other people. It's infectious. Just like a men's group. It's like human beings are social animals. We are supposed to be around other people. If there's a reason that you're struggling, it might be because you're trying to go it alone. And this idea of the lone wolf has been romanticized in our culture. Again, why? Whole other podcast. But like, get with your people, get with your brothers. The technology of the clan, of the tribe is everything. You mentioned Andrew Tate. Something Andrew Tate says a lot is that your net worth is your network. And I really like that. And, part of my homework lately has been to listen to people that maybe get a bad rap in certain ways, but there's wisdom in all kinds of different forms. But there is a deep technology in brotherhood. And again, you cannot replace having good people that you trust, that you've been through in situations where you come through for each other. And then it's not even a question of trusting them. And then it's like, who do I want to make a business deal with? Dan. Who do I want to go and train with at the gym? Dan. Who do I want to go and do this podcast with? Dan. Who do I want to do a whole series of workshops in Boulder, Colorado with? Dan. It's like, well, you proved yourself time and time again. And again, that's it. And I don't care how old you fucking are. You're a lot younger than me. It's like, okay, you're ready. Let's do this. Let's work. Let's do it. So what are you up to these days, Dan? Where can people find you? Where can
Yeah, brother. Well, for people in the Denver, Boulder area. I do one-on-one coaching work. I do some retreat work, and I've been recently doing some group training work. So small kind of groups of just no more than 3 people, really dedicated to expanding themselves in all areas, health, mind, body, spirit. And then in addition to that, on the theme of shadow, right? I dropped a album recently, my creative endeavors in music, and I put out an album just 5 days ago called Shadow Blues, which is the culmination of a lot of feeling, a lot of processing, the ending of a relationship, a wild journey through Central America, and people can find that album on Spotify and Apple Music, and find me on Instagram, Dan.Hochman. That's Hochman.
What are you waiting for, fellas? Hit him up. Hit him up. Dan, it's been an honor, a pleasure. 3rd time's a charm. For you guys watching, thanks for being here. We appreciate you. Get yourself in a group of men. If you already got it, great. There's always a chance to deepen it. Be the guy that invites one of your friends to a men's group. Be the guy that starts one, that researches it, that does it with your boys. Be willing to be the leader of your crew. Everyone's sitting around waiting for the leader to show up. Maybe it's you. Maybe that's why it hasn't shown up yet. So
yes.
Be bold, be strong, be brave, be sensitive, be heartfelt, sharpen your freaking sword, and let's go. Let's go. Let's go.
Boom.
Love you guys. Talk to you guys soon. Thanks for listening.